Okay, we'll start out the show. We're going to head over to a marina over at Nicotera, and that is in Italy. And the date on this attack is August 30th of 1902. 4 young men, they were swimming, and it sounds like they were swimming in the marina, and they saw a shark. So 4 young men that were swimming started swimming for shore, and one of the young men suddenly disappeared below the surface. There was a fishing boat nearby, and it came over, and it had seen the victim come up to the surface, yell for help, and just before it got to him, he was taken under and taken away, never to be seen again. So one of the 4 boys, and he was unidentified, ended up passing away when the shark ended up taking him away just before the boat was able to reach him after its initial attack. And this is an attack, a predation. We don't know the gentleman's name. It'll go in there unknown, male, and we don't know the size of the shark, but attempt to consume the victim. So that's our attack on the unknown male over in Italy, and we will move on. Okay, now we're gonna head over to Juno Beach. That's over in Florida. The date on this attack is July 15th of 1953. Mrs. D.F. Gunn, she was out standing in the water. She's standing in knee-deep water, doesn't say time of day, distance from shore, but her and her husband are in knee-deep water, and they're talking to another couple. And they're speaking to each other, and suddenly she is bitten in the leg by a shark. So they're in knee-deep water, they're having a conversation, a shark comes up and bites her in the leg. They don't identify this type of shark or size of shark, but it's probably a pretty big shark, because with the damage it did to her leg, and she's got people right next to her husband and another couple that are probably helping her right away. It's so bad that the doctors didn't know whether they could save that leg or not. So you're in knee-deep water, and a shark ends up coming up and grabbing hold of you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Probably a real short attack. They probably bit, shake, maybe a couple bites to the leg, and then it went on its way. And all this damage is done to where doctors, in 1953 no less, but still doctors didn't know if they could save the leg. And I didn't see any update to see whether they did save the leg, but she ends up surviving. So Mrs. D.F. Gunn goes down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. We don't know what size shark, what kind of shark, but with the kind of damage that was done, I would say it's probably one of the big 3. A tiger or a bull, probably a bull. It got a hold of her leg and did that kind of damage, because I haven't heard of that kind of damage from like one of the spinners or the black tips that are usually biting people off that coast there. And others could do it, lemon sharks and stuff, but bull sharks and stuff are usually the ones that do this. So that's the attack on Mrs. Gunn, and we will move on. Okay, now we're going to head over to Isanora Beach. That is over in Japan. The date is August 11th of 1959. Akira Tsuchiya, he is 13 years old, and he and 6 other friends had taken and gone out on a boat. Sounds like a catamaran or something, and they're out going for a ride, and they end up by Isanora Beach, and they're 500 meters from shore at about 2:30 in the afternoon in 30 feet deep water, somewhere around there. And they get out and they start swimming. And Akira is one of them that gets out and starts swimming. Now he's farthest from shore. So going from shore, the friends are closer in. So I don't know if they were swimming to shore or if they were just swimming around. But Akira was the furthest away from the beach. Like I said, 500 meters from the beach. So about 530 yards, somewhere around there. And he's attacked by a shark, and nobody really witnesses it. They hear him scream, and they see him in the water, and he yells, "Help me," and then he's dragged under the water just before the friends get there, and they see that there's blood in the water where he disappeared. They can't find him, so they go in and they get help. So Akira disappeared at 2:30 when he was taken under the water screaming for help, and he wasn't seen again until they recovered his body at about 7. So 2.5 hours after he disappeared, they end up going at 5 o'clock. They end up going out and they find his body, and I believe his right leg is severed below the knee. And they said that they suspect this was a blue shark at about 10 feet long. And I'm not sure where they came up with blue shark on this one. And it doesn't sound like anybody identified the shark when it was attacking. So possibly they went off of, tooth fragments that chipped off when it went ahead and bit the leg off. But I didn't see any information on that. So right now we're going to put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate, by the unusual in close to shore blue shark. But this isn't going to be the only shallow water blue shark. We've already covered one that came up to the Keys, came up all the way about 300 yards from shore at the Keys, which is very shallow water. You're talking 10, 20 feet until you get miles out. And this blue shark ended up coming in there. So here's another one, and we're going to go over another one pretty soon. So this does happen where these blue sharks, they're all over the waters. And then once you get out into the open ocean and deep waters, they're probably the most common sharks in the waters. They have pups, and they have 100 to 150 pups every time they have them. So they have large numbers, and they pretty much cover all the water from cold to cold. They don't have that, I don't think they have that area at the equator where it's too hot, like for a great white to go in there, where they're not usually there. There's a little break at the equator where the great whites don't like that warm water, whereas the blue sharks don't mind. So that's the attack on Akira. Attack, not an attempt to predate. Blue shark, 10 feet long. We'll move on. Okay, now we're going to head over to Cold Storage Beach. That is over in Massachusetts. The date on this attack is July 21st of 1996. James Orlowski. He is 46 years old, and he is about 4 feet of water, almost just a little bit above waist deep probably, and he's 100 yards from shore. And he's swimming along, and he is attacked. He is bitten in his foot, and now luckily he's in water he can stand in. He's fighting the shark off of him, and he says he's hitting on the shark as it bit his foot. He's beating on the shark. The shark finally lets him go, and he turns to go to shore, and that was his left foot that got attacked. Shark comes back and bites him in the right foot as he's walking to shore after it attacked him in the left foot prior. So he goes in. He needs 46 stitches to sew all that up. He ends up surviving the attack. So it's an attack, not an attempt to predate. And this turns out to be a 6 to 8 foot, another blue shark. So you got another shallow water blue shark. I guess they come into the shallows more than I thought they did, because I know of 3 or 4 that we've covered, and they're not out in the open ocean like I would think on spear fishermen. They're close to shore. So that's another attack by the blue shark on James Orlowski. Like I said, attack, not an attempt to predate, 6 to 8 foot blue shark, and we'll move on. Okay, now we're going to head over to Cocoa Beach, and that is over in Oyster Bay, which is in Tanzania. The date on this attack, September 8th of 2000. Godfrey Msemwa, he is 28 years old, and he and a friend are going to go do some swimming. We're going to get into Cocoa Beach real quick. They had a rash of attacks prior to Msemwa getting into the water. 4 people, all fatalities that year, prior to Msemwa getting into the water, had passed away in shark attacks. They had a shark attack the year before, and it was a minor attack, and the authorities cautioned, oh, it's no big deal, it's out of the ordinary. And then you get to this year, and there ends up being 4 people attacked by sharks, all 4 fatal. And now they got the beaches shut down. The beach, Cocoa Beach, is shut down because of these prior 4 fatalities. They got a policeman on duty to guard the beach to keep people out of the water. Policeman this day is asleep. He's asleep and doesn't see Msemwa and his friend get into the water and start swimming. Msemwa gets out there. He gets attacked by a shark. Taken away. Number 5, completely consumed by the shark. And they had a police patrol on the beach to go ahead and keep him from the water. So I don't know how, I don't think we've covered many of these Cocoa Beach attacks. So I'm going to have to go through and get through these. It's a cluster. So I'm going to have to go through and get these things covered, and then I'll be able to cover it as a cluster, because that's one of the craziest clusters I've seen, to have 5 attacks in 1 year at the same beach and have them all be fatal. That's just crazy. So that's the attack on, sadly, Mr. Msemwa. And like I said, if the patrolman, if the policeman was awake, he might not have ever entered the water in the first place. And maybe they should have put more people on that beach. But that is one of those crazy second beach type things where you're just having a rash of just awful attacks. And Reunion Island, which we're going to finish off the show with, and we'll go over the stats on what your chances are if you're touched by a shark in that water, at least by what we've covered so far. I think we covered 14, and this next one will be 15. And we'll go over real quick just the stats on Reunion Island at the end, because it's kind of like that to where, how can that be that this happens at these beaches? And how does it happen like in Sharm el-Sheikh? You have 5 or 6 within a matter of weeks in one year, and then they're scattered from there and almost rare at other times. It's just odd. So we will get into that. We will move on to the last unprovoked attack of the show. Okay, we'll finish up our unprovoked attacks. We're going to head over to Lighthouse Beach. That's over in Australia, New South Wales, Australia. The date on this is October 5th of 2019. Mike Bruton, 29 years old. He is out doing some surfing with his brother. They had been surfing for a couple hours, and it's about 4:30 in the afternoon. He is untold depth and distance from shore, but he has just taken a wave halfway to shore, and it sounds like he fell off the wave, or the wave died off, and he's now waiting on a wave for a second to get the rest of the way, and he's waiting on a wave. He says suddenly it felt like he got hit by a train. This shark came up from underneath him, blasted him in the board, and witnesses that were around, because there was people on the beach that had seen this happen, they saw the shark clear out of the water. And Mike himself says that when he was falling back in the water, he could see the shark falling back into the water. So he says he was hit up into the air. He went one way, his board went the other way. The witnesses said they saw the shark, once it was up out of the water, bite down on the board, which also snapped the leash, because he was wondering how that leash ended up being snapped. Well, it sounds like it was snapped in the bite. So the witnesses saw the shark breach, knock the board up. Mike goes the other way, the board goes one way, and the shark bites down on the board, slicing the leash at the same time that's connected to Mike's leg as he goes crashing in the water. And the shark goes crashing into the water, and then Mike grabs his board and pulls it underneath him and gets his way in. He ends up with no injury from this attack. His board is destroyed though. So it's an attack, not an attempt to predate, by a great white shark in an attack on a surfboard. Only the surfboard, and surfer and surfboard, only the surfboard damaged. But Mike had said he thought this was a 2.5 meter great white shark, and like I said, he had seen the shark, he says, when he was falling into the water, seeing the shark fall into the water away from him, and he thought it was 2.5 meters. But they went ahead and looked at the board, and the board has a huge chunk out of it, and the expert said that's at least a 3.5 meter shark. So what Mike ended up thinking was about an 8-foot shark turns out to be at least an 11-footer. And you know, that's just a crazy attack. Another one of those where you're blasted up in the air, but you get out without a scratch. And that's the attack on Mike Bruton. That's our last non-provoked attack. We'll get into the end of the show next. Okay, we're going to go over and finish out the attacks over at St. Paul, which is in Reunion Island, and the date on this attack. This one here is January 10th of 1996. Gregory Beneche, 25 years old. He goes into the water at St. John's to go ahead and do some surfing. He's out in the water at 3:30. I believe it's 3:30. He's out in the water at 3:30 within a half hour. So he's out there for a half hour. He's bitten a single time by a shark. It turns out to be fatal. They don't explain the wound, they don't describe it, and a lot of the attacks over at Reunion, it's a lot like a lot of places in Brazil. Those two places you don't get a lot of information. I'm surprised we even got his name on this one, but another fatality over there, and that made me look at Reunion Island to see what was going on. We've covered 14 before this, and out of the 14 that we covered before this, 7 were fatal. So 50%. Half of the shark attacks that we've covered out of 14 over at Reunion Island are fatal. Now it's over 50% because now it's 8 out of 15. And it's just not a place that you want to go doing things. I mean, it's one thing to take chances like when you're in California where you're, you know, surfing or swimming, and there's not a lot of attempts to predate off of California, not like these other places. And, you know, just to swim and surf off of California, I would think that's a lot safer than to swim or surf off of just Reunion Island, let alone South Africa or Australia. The sharks are just different. They're probably more well fed, and it just solidifies the fact that I think that any time a shark is trying to eat a person, it is desperate. Don't matter which one it is, a bull, a tiger, or a great white. If it's trying to eat a person, it is desperate. It's desperate hungry, that empty stomach thing where they don't have the energy to go after their own prey. And the more that I see these differences, that's the only thing I can explain, is that for some reason over off the west coast of the United States, those sharks are fed well off of all the seals, sea lions, elephant seals. They got everything that they can eat there. And then you have, you know, your whales that'll end up dying in the water that they get to scavenge off of there too. So I'm thinking they're more well fed there than they are over in South Africa or over in Australia. And that is the reason that there's so many less desperate sharks over off of California than there are off of there. So, and the other stat with the attacks that I just wanted to go over is that this one is in the afternoon too, and about 4 o'clock. Like I said, he went in the water at 3:30, it hit at 4 o'clock. That makes 13 attacks in the afternoon that we've covered. 2 in the morning. So, and the morning ones were 8:15 and I think like 10:15. Everything else is in the afternoon. And that's just a kind of a crazy attack. Maybe you know, I don't know if it doesn't warm up until later. It's kind of like me with trying to golf in this state. And at this time of the year, it's just too cold in the morning for me to even want to go out there. You know, your muscles don't work. Mine don't. I like 80 degrees or hotter. I like 90 and 100 degrees when I'm outside. So it's just the way that people are. That's the attack on Gregory Beneche. That's a little bit of strange things to where you have almost all of them are in the afternoon, and over half of them are fatal. And that's not great whites, that's all kinds of different sharks. So it seems sharks aren't very well fed over there off of Reunion Island. You know, I hope you join me for another set of attacks, and maybe even might be a single attack next or a multi-victim attack show next. But I hope you join me, and you know, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.